Julian Turner got a new lease on life after his suicide attempt. He leapt off a cliff in KwaZulu-Natal and fell 18 meters down this gorge.
It was a case of I want to disappear, and I thought the quickest and easiest way would be to jump. But incredibly, I fell 18 meters, which is an incredible distance. And I'm here today. I can walk, although I have a disabled left leg. With the aid of an orthotic, I'm able to walk. I have been diagnosed now with bipolar, and I have the correct medication. And I have a renewed life. That's what's incredible about it. My employer was absolutely fantastic. I had a very senior executive come and visit me at home and to see how I was. And the first thing that was made known to me was that I should not worry about my job. The main focus was to get better, and that the organization would welcome me back with open arms. And that's exactly what has happened. I'm a senior manager in the financial services industry, and my ordeal has enabled me now to have a much better work-life balance. And that is what I actively pursue every single day. I make sure that I don't fall into the same trap that I fell into before. Working late nights, burning the midnight oil, working on weekends. That is out. So I find I'm far more productive in what I do during the day, but that I also have other areas in my life which are important, like helping others who are struggling with a mental illness, ensuring that I'm spending more time with my family. I don't feel ashamed in what I did, because it's actually exposed what is so real out there in the world. And my plea to those who have bipolar, who are suffering from other forms of mental illness, do not be ashamed. There are people out there that can help. There's medication that can help you.
Mental illness has become a growing concern globally, and in South Africa, according to the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, SADAG, 1 in 3 South Africans will experience some sort of mental illness in their lives. They also state that calls to the call center have increased from 200 to 400 daily. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has stated that by the year 2030, depression will become a leading global burden disease. Kirat Lalla, Morning Live.
All right, touching stories about how some people overcame their attempted suicide and learn about their mental illness. Now, if you feel that you're in the same boat, don't despair. We have SADAG board member and clinical psychologist Zamo Mbele in studio with us to discuss how one can deal with these feelings of suicide. It's good to have you here on the program, and welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
It's real. I mean, suicide, depression, mental illness is real. It knows no boundaries and it can affect anybody. How serious is the situation?
I mean, I think the statistics that you were mentioning earlier, and so was mentioned a little bit earlier with the reporter, are very poignant, and at the very same time, they're probably incredibly modest. 1 in 3 South Africans will probably come across or suffer from a mental illness. It's probably more 2 in 3, or a little bit more than that.
Yeah.
I think in South Africa, the stigma, number 1, and number 2, the lack of research and knowledge about mental illness is one of the biggest problems, because a lot of our people are struggling with it, not only themselves, though, with family members and friends as well.
Yeah, quite interesting that we've got some facts coming up there. Men are more likely to commit suicide than women. Someone living with HIV/AIDS is 36 times more likely to get, I mean, and these are all going to come up. Now, this one gets to me. 1 in 5 teens have attempted suicide. I mean, these stresses and strains that we find upon ourselves, you know, how do we, I suppose, what do we do if we find ourselves in these positions?
I mean, I want to stick a little bit to what you're mentioning about the teens, and I think over the last 15 to 20 years, we've noticed a shift from more middle-aged to older people attempting suicide to younger people, teens in particular. And I think that goes to show a couple of things, including the neglect of support to our young adults and our adolescents and our teenagers as well as the increased burden and the demand on them that's placed in our current society. And
yeah, I mean, what's happening around the country right now? We cannot isolate ourselves from the fact that these students are desperate right now. They're desperate for an education. And I think we can link this up to matric students as well, because
Absolutely.
let's talk about the two aspects of studying. One aspect is the academic side, and this must be very hard on students as well. Do you find an increased suicide rate at this point in a student's life?
Well, what we see are two trends. The first one is the increased suicide attempts and suicide rates with matriculants when it comes to the results coming up and exams as well, around from November to January. Similar story with the university students. Though what I want to focus on a little bit today is particularly what is on a big topic for a lot of people at the moment, which is the social stresses that a lot of students face. So while they might be doing well or performing appropriately academically, everything else around them not going well puts an incredible burden, especially for the student who recognizes how their parents have gone to incredible lengths to try and get them there, and there's massive pressure on them. And oftentimes the only answer for them in that moment is suicide, not to let themselves down and particularly not to let their family and friends down.
How high is the suicide rate in students in South Africa?
It's underreported and in many cases not reported. And I think that's because of shame, that's because of stigma. So unfortunately we don't have an accurate figure, though it's way too much. Yeah. One student attempting or committing suicide is already too high a statistic for us to be speaking about.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about this, and I think it's so important that we do discuss this, because it is a very important time in the calendar here in South Africa where we're finding students writing exams. But at the same time, what we're seeing on the streets of South Africa, outside all of our universities, is a desperate attempt from students to try and get their degrees, but it's the financial burden that they feel that they cannot handle. I mean, financial burden, when you talk about men committing suicide, I imagine that's one of the greatest causes as well. Not only with men, I mean, I am just, bringing that into the equation, but students not being able to pay their fees, men not being able to support their families, women not being able to support their families. Finance must play a huge part.
Well, what's incredibly unique to South Africa is exactly that the economics and the financial disposition that we find ourselves becomes one of the biggest causes for people to think and to attempt suicide, which is not necessarily the case everywhere else in the world, though very specific to South Africa, yes.
What do we do? Just finally, I mean, we need to give some advice, because we're talking about causes, and I think there are many causes of why somebody would want to attempt suicide. How do we stop ourselves? I mean, if somebody is watching right now and they are in a desperate state, we have X amount of attempted suicide a day, and there may be someone watching right now, what do you tell them?
Well, perhaps I would begin by linking it to the protests that we're seeing. I do not think that things need to escalate to this extent for people to be heard. And it's a very similar thing with suicide attempts, is that people oftentimes do not feel heard. And what we can start to do is to listen and to look out and to try and pick up some sort of something that's going wrong and to try and seek help, whether it's SADAG, whether it's your local community health clinic or primary, tertiary hospital. Try and seek help. Speak to somebody. You're not alone, and there is help out there.
Yeah, I mean, even if even if you're in a position where you have no friends, you have no family, there is help externally.
Absolutely.
SADAG, give me that number again. There, it's on the screen. It always catches me off guard.
0800 70 80 90, or you can send a message to 31393, and there are agents ready to call you back and to try and assist you with whatever problem that you have.
Thank you so much. 0800, there's lots of numbers coming up, but the one you gave me is 0800 70 80 90.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much for talking to us here on the program. Very important issue. Zamo Mbele, clinical psychologist and also a SADAG board member, talking to us about the unacceptably high rates of suicide here in South Africa. In fact, one of the in the top 10 countries in the world when it comes to suicides, which is really bad. All right, just to let you know, we are going until 8:30 here on Morning Live with the program. We know we didn't bring you up to date with 7:30 news headlines.